This is the session on creativity and innovation in business. It's my pleasure to be here with my co-panelists. I'll introduce them in a little bit. My name is Param, and I'm going to have this conversation about creativity and innovation in business. Let me get straight away jump into an article that I found a couple of months ago. The famous management guru, innovation evangelist, Ram Charan, wrote this fascinating article which talked about an interesting thing, that it's not just companies that are dying now, but it's also industries. We all keep hearing this in popular media every day, but what's fascinating is that industries are dying. And I think that's the point that stood out for me. And what's interesting about this, and even this is something that we know, but what's interesting about this is that for me, if something is being destroyed, there's probably something that's also being created, right? A little bit of this Eastern sort of Hindu philosophy of creation and destruction sort of going hand in hand. But what's interesting is that something is being created, and therefore there's an interesting opportunity for bringing creativity into business. And therefore we need to probably look at who's creating something which is destroying something else. We're going to talk a little bit about that. The second aspect of what he spoke about was that CEOs need to look at uncertainty in the next 5 years or in the future, and that's going to be much more important than certainty. And I think as a design practitioner, and I'm sure many of you here are design practitioners as well, we're all used to and we love the process of going from ambiguity to clarity, right? That's something that we are naturally trained at or naturally good at. And I think there's an opportunity, therefore, to bring that process of creative management into business as well, and probably helping business leaders manage that uncertainty. So therefore, the fundamental sort of conversation that we're going to have today, that I just thought of sort of triggering off, is about what are the business needs of today. And I'm sure most of you in this community are designers or design practitioners. And therefore, I think it's good to reflect and learn a little bit about what does the business want and what is it that we can provide as creative practitioners for business. So I'm now going to introduce the panel with me. Abanti. Abanti is the managing director of Diageo. And I think as the CEO of such a large multinational corporation, I think it's going to be interesting to hear about what are her experiences and learnings about where creativity can play a role. We're going to talk about that. Nick is a global design head at Tata Elxsi, one of the leading design companies. And Nick has got some fabulous experience around design, practicing design across the world. And it'll be good to hear the India side of the story as well as some global perspectives. And we've got Rodrigo, who's the vice chairman of FLOS. Thank you so much for being with me. And so I'm going to now sort of turn the conversation to Abanti. And maybe if you could start talking a little bit about your experience and some of the key challenges, what you see in business.
I just want to start by saying that for any business, innovation is a way to get disruptive in the marketplace. And what innovation and creativity does for a business is really to create value creation opportunities. And it's something that you saw on the chart just now, where Professor Ram Charan said, businesses are getting destroyed, and it's all about, therefore, creating. And what I mean by value creation opportunity is that as businesses which are ultimately looking for creating profits, we are always looking for opportunities that will allow us to add more value to whatever business we are currently running in. And the environment that we are in today throws up lots of opportunities. So for example, if you look at India today, there are lots of new consumer groups which are emerging right across industries. You could say children are a consumer group. You could say women are an emerging consumer group for many markets. Emerging middle class is a consumer group. So there are different consumer groups that are emerging, particularly in the Indian market today. And the question for businesses like ours is, what do we need to do to excite and tap into the opportunity, into the commercial or the value opportunity that these consumer groups create? And the answer very often lies not just in presenting our current portfolio of brands, but also what can we do differently. That could sometimes be a new product. It could be a new way of accessing the market. It could be new packaging. It could be new formats. It could be a multiple of things. But all that very much for a business is part of innovation. So innovation is not just a new product. It's all this as well. So that's fundamentally what I would like to say, that for a business, innovation is a value-creating opportunity in a very dynamic environment.
Rodrigo, if you could have your comments as well from the business perspective again, what has been your experience of where does creativity play a role in the context of business? Or what are the areas in business where creativity can help?
Do you know that the Bible says that God has created the world in 6 days, and the seventh he rested. But the Bible does not say that before resting, God said to the humankind who would arrive, I need that somebody, the designers, continue the creation. So the responsibility of the designers today is to go on and creating new objects, new good of consumption, to continue to improve the quality of life of the human beings. Creation and innovation. May I suggest that creation is as you enter in a dark room and try to understand where is the exit. And at a certain point you grasp a light. There you go, and you are creating something which was not existing before. Or, for a more intellectual point of view, creation is a way to connect facts, things, ideas, information, but to connect in an original way. Innovation now. Innovation from a business perspective, because I am an entrepreneur, I make money with innovation, is a tool to build competitive advantage. I don't know if you're familiar with a book which has been written by two Harvard Business School teachers, Blue Ocean Strategy. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
How to make the competition irrelevant. And the role of the entrepreneur in the design process. Design is a process starting from an innovative idea to the interested service of which the manufacturer puts his company, materializing the idea through several steps. One is to make the prototype, which allows the designer to understand where the material is complying with his idea, engineering, manufacturing, selling, communicating. But the starting point of the added value that the entrepreneur can give to the design is to catch the weak signals coming from a not yet existing market, to offer to the market something, or to the clients, to the consumers, something which they were expecting, but they were not yet aware to wait for. Let me stop now.
Thank you. I think that's a fascinating, I think I've always looked at entrepreneurs as an interesting species, and I was one of them for a short period of time, who sort of are, I think, able to connect creativity with business and often do something interesting. Nick, some perspective from you now as a design practitioner or as a creativity practitioner. What do you think are the opportunities for you to play a role in business?
Rodrigo, who began with creation and God and so on, right? But to pick up on a couple of your themes, for me, if design is not about solving problems, and if innovation is not about making things better, and we need to be very clear, there's a big difference between doing something different and actually doing something better, okay? And quite often I think in the design community, never mind the business community, there's a confusion between just doing something different and putting a sticker on it that says new and piling a bunch of money into the marketing. The really powerful innovation is when we make things better. So that's the first point. The second point for me is indeed about looking into the future. So most businesses, even very well-run ones, are so busy worrying about quarter-on-quarter revenue and increasing profits and HR and all of that stuff, that in fact it's very difficult to properly look into the future. Yes, there's a bit of forecasting and there's consumer research done and so on, but if you do want to be genuinely disruptive, and to Rodrigo's point, if you want to deliver something, and the way I term it is unexpected but relevant. For me, that's a really good signifier of real innovation and design. So one of the things that design must understand is that business is so busy making sure that it doesn't go under, to your point about industries being destroyed, that one of the strongest things that we can offer is a sense of clarity about the future. But that clarity has to be, let's say, relevant in the context of that business. So, and I won't chunter on for too long, but you know, one of the biggest challenges that designers, and this is global by the way, I've been working for Tata Elxsi Design for nearly 2 years, but I've worked with companies all over the globe, businesses all over the globe, selling and doing design for them, design and innovation. And in every single case, and I think this is certainly true in India, unless business can see the relevance of design in business terms, not in design terms, then it's a nearly impossible sell, right? Because why would they bother? And designers need to remember that if they want business to embrace what design does, design has to embrace business as well and talk the language of business. And traditionally, we don't like doing it. You know, money's such a dirty thing, darling, and we don't really want to think about profit or any of that stuff because it's about the big idea and creativity. Now, of course, that mustn't go away, but unless we have an eye on what our colleagues in business have to deal with, then we cease to be relevant. So it's about solving problems, clarity in the future, and talking the language of business in the context of innovation.
Great. I just want to sort of get some reactions from the audience and maybe ask anybody who wants to ask some questions or even sort of comment on what we've discussed so far.
Okay, the question is, in typical Indian scenario, I think there has still been a lack of realization of people who are in business and who are driving business that innovation, how innovation is playing a part in actually, like what you mentioned, bringing the value proposition. And I think the value proposition is always termed as something disruptive, but the clarity is still not there. And we really don't know, maybe it's a cultural influence that we have never grown to think in that way, or we have never have the education to make people think in that way. So how do you see actually the message being communicated to the business leadership of innovation bringing business perspective or value perspective to their whole approach of growth?
I think the first thing is that, you know, the sort of hat that innovation people in an organization need to put is really the business hat, exactly like Nick said. Because, you know, we all appreciate the fact that a great idea is you know, potentially very promising. But at the end of it, the value of the idea for a business really comes from how it can help to create value for that business in the marketplace. And therefore, choices of whether a business supports a particular innovation idea really boil down to how do you see the linkage between that idea, that concept, and actually translate it all the way into this is what it means. This is the incremental benefit it will drive for the business. So it does, unfortunately, become a sort of financial question at the end of it. But at the same time, I do want to say that there are There are organizations which thrive on innovation, which believe very strongly on the power of innovation. And those are where I think people who are very creative and believe in the power of innovation should go and kind of work there or partner with such organizations. Not all organizations are equally enlightened on that score.
By the way, in Milano, these days, there is an exhibition of the Indian design. We have here with us the chairman of the Triennale Museum. And before leaving, of course, I went to spend some time in this exhibition. And I got an impression which I would like to check with you. Differently from other newcoming in the design world countries, the Indian examples of design there showed a peculiar, particular ability to mix tradition with the today life. In some way, the language, or if you wish, the vernaculus, which is expressed by those objects, makes this object consistent with the very rich and diversified Indian culture. So I express a concern. I don't know if the Italian design will be able to conquer the Indian market, because I feel that several Indian young designers, if the manufacturers accept the risk, and they should, they will be able to offer to you, Indian consumers, products which are more consistent with your flavor of life. Do you agree with me?
Yes, I do.
That's music to many Indian designers, I think. Nick, do you want to sort of provide a perspective on that as well?
I think in some ways it's very simple, okay? I'll give you an example. My chum, John Brash, I seem to have a habit of picking on people, but who we've just recently announced a partnership with. He runs a branding agency based out of Dubai. One of the things that John does very well, because I've seen him in action, he doesn't begin his presentation or his pitch with, fluffy stuff to do with how powerful brands are or any of that stuff. He puts about 5 slides up that either have testimonials from his previous clients or some facts and figures about how his design intervention has added some value, right? Whether that's increasing asset values in the real estate market or driving the revenue that a hotel can get from each room that they sell, because branding has done its job. And what I've seen is that it instantly resonates with potential clients, because they see that he understands, unless there's going to be an improvement, frankly, on the bottom line, then there isn't really very much point spending money on his fees. So, this session, yes, is about creativity, but ultimately we have to accept that unless design can make a difference, yes, to the world, yes, to consumers, but unless it benefits business, then we ain't going to get paid. So that's my perspective on that.
I think it's very clear that there is a role. I want to hear a little bit from the audience about, and the design practitioners or creativity practitioners. What are the challenges that you're facing or you've seen others facing in actually reaching out to business or working with business and showing the value of creativity? Nick?
Hi, Nick.
Hi.
My question is to you that I think you have been juggling, means I see a vicious circle being weaved in all the talk, that there's a money, there's a creativity, and then there's a consumer involved in the whole story. But as you rightly said, when you start creating, you don't start putting a stumbling blocks. So do you think being a designer that you really have to think in that ways in terms of the financials and the deliverables? Can you keep both things together while working a solution, like creativity and the costing and stuff?
The short answer is yes, okay? But the act of designing something is, or being creative, for me anyway, is about steering your way through a whole series of opportunities to what the project might become, a whole series of threats, a whole series of relevances, okay? So, you know, it's a bit of an old cliche that clients will still come to me or to my team and they'll say, we just want you to do some really blue sky thinking, okay? And I say, okay, so you're currently in the business of manufacturing food mixers. Shall I present you a tadpole or perhaps a small, you know, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but they'll say, no, we don't want to constrain your thinking, okay? Just really, you know, get out there. In many ways, design is, I would call it a kind of emotional logic, all right? So we're just balancing out a whole series of factors. Yes, we need to understand what the consumer needs and what they want and all of these other factors. So just putting certain constraints or maybe even opportunities that are to do with cost into that mix, for me is no different than putting a constraint about consumer or law or ecology or anything else in there. So it's part of our job to do that. I mean, if you're an artist or if I'm doing a project for myself, then of course I can do what the hell I want. But actually the role of a professional designer, certainly an industrial designer, is to balance out all of these factors in a way that leads to a relevant solution. If that doesn't sound too logical, otherwise you just waste a lot of time. And God knows if there's one thing that designers can't waste, it's time. So yeah, the constraint should be in there at the beginning. But it is about having a conversation with the client instead of running away and, you know, burning the midnight oil. It's about having conversations. I'll take these constraints on. How seriously should we take all of these constraints at the moment? If the client says, okay, you know, look 5 years out instead of next week, then that reframes the objective and the way that we have to approach the design. But just to ignore it actually leaves you without any frame of reference. It's very difficult to do anything if you don't have a direction.
I organized a music festival in 2012 called Rajasthan. To us, the team, we thought this was probably a very innovative idea. It was on the lines of Glastonbury, Coachella is what a lot of people called it as well. It was out in the middle of the desert, where we managed to get about 2,000 odd people by talking about it in a span of about 2 months. We had a lot of support internationally, and Nick, like you mentioned, a lot of countries, especially a lot of European countries, were looking at the project and saying, well, we'd like to help out with the design elements, such as, you know, adding solar power to the festival and different ways of doing it. But we had a very tough time convincing local companies and businesses to support us in this project. And Abanti, just going to what you mentioned, where, you know, you said there is that bit of a disconnect with creative people and businesses. I think it's a fair point, but at the same time, creative people are creative people. You know, we need businesses to help us make that vision come alive. Do you not think more needs doing? Do businesses not, you know, isn't it up to them to take that chance and make this happen? Because I feel everybody wants a success formula. You know, the people that we went to this year said, we want to see what you come up with. But nobody was willing to give it a go and support it in its first year. We're in our second year now, and things are looking better because people are getting in touch with us to say, well, you know, let's do something together. But we didn't have that support in the first year. Just your thoughts on that, please.
I'll just take you back to a couple of things I said earlier. One is, I mentioned about enlightened organizations. And that's exactly what I mean. An enlightened organization is one which will not always take the next week's view or the next quarter outlook, but go beyond that to support some, you know, either creative work within a business or creative, you know, events or things which are happening outside of the business, but within the community. So yes, absolutely. But that's why you need enlightened organizations, and there are many such organizations. The other thing, and just to give an example, I mean, if you just look at some of the sponsors and supporters of this particular event, the design show, you do see a lot of businesses which are supporting it, right? So now, the other thing that I want to say is, it is a fact, and I'm not going to pull any punches on that, it is a fact that organizations are up against very, very competitive times in a very competitive environment, and there is a lot of pressure from the stock market, from company boards, etc., which are about, business strategy, return on investment, etc., and the market is very unforgiving. So that is not to say that therefore companies should not support creativity, but I'm sharing that with you just so that you empathize also about what companies do face as a day-to-day challenge. And the enlightened organizations and the smart organizations are those which are able to balance the two. So, and if you look at India as well, there are so many forums, so many new things, whether it's a literary festival or whether it's cultural events, there's a lot which corporates do support. So I do understand and appreciate the challenge you went through, but I do feel that there are organizations out there which support such causes.
That's been with me for the whole of my design career, right? I look at the idea and I think, would I put my money into that? Now, it's one thing if you say, I'll put $10 into it. It's a very different thing if I think to myself, would I bet everything that I've got, which frankly, boys and girls, is not much, but would I bet everything that I've scraped together in the past 25 years on this idea? And if the answer in my gut is no, then I know that the idea isn't as good as it should be. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.